I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. And I also like to bring regrets from Councillor Palmer. He can't make it tonight. 2, confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the agenda for May 15th, 2023 council meeting as presented. Do I have a mover? Deputy Reeve Faulkner, Councillor Whitfield. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Seeing none. Public comment. This is opportunity for the members of the public to speak to an item of business on the agenda, 2 minutes per person. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 5, consent agenda, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the consent items 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.6 for information. Does anybody want to pull anything? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Thank you, Reeve. Just a comment on 5.2.4, before us here's the final Columbus Center, Knights of Columbus agreements. The comment I want to make on it is we have in our municipality, we only have 2 not-for-profit organizations that enter into lease agreements with the township. And I have nothing against the changing the agreement, splitting the 2 into separate entities. Where I do find some concern in is the addition in the agreement to add the kitchen appliances to the agreement as to switching that over to the taxpayer base, where the township is responsible for the replacement costs. Originally, there were about $100,000 originally. So I'm just guessing as within a time frame of $50,000 for replacing in the next 15 years or whatever, but that being put onto the taxpayer. At the same time, during the budget deliberations, this council removed $10,000 worth of endorsement to the other nonprofit organization, reducing our pledge to them from $15,000 down to $5,000. So I'm just wondering what kind of a message we're sending, adding $50,000 post-budget while removing $10,000 pre-budget, and where it's going to come from. I would much rather that portion of it come back during a budget time rather than post-budget. It just seems to be an unnecessary adding when it's not captured in any of our financial records. Of course, it would only be captured if the replacement came, but adding that to the contract now, I just find that's treating one with one brush and treating the other one with another brush. And I'm just curious, is it just as simple as just bringing a motion back forward to reinstate the full commitment of funding to the other nonprofit while we're at, or I'm just curious that way of why this will come after budget and treating 2 different entities or 2 same entities as far as leasees and nonprofits differently. I'm open to answers, but
Okay. Thank you, CAO.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So just in terms of the agreement in terms of the Knights, the way it's set up is basically that the township would theoretically or assume responsibility, which is what the request was that we received from the Knights for the kitchen equipment and the flooring, the capital improvements. The costs for those would be funded out of the Knights of Reserve account, and it would be the Knights that would be putting the money into that account. So just in terms of Deputy Reeve, in terms of made reference to taxpayer, it would be donations that would be received and contributions from the Knights that would go into the reserve account. Then those funds would be used to fund the capital. So there'd be no additional cost to the taxpayer.
Just a return question on your answering there. But was it not indicated that they wish to remove that portion out of the beneficiary fund that they promised in the first agreement, that the money they wanted to put into it would now still be theirs to do what they wanted? So it is actually money owed to the taxpayer in an agreement when the agreement came. So it's changing the agreement to put that onto the taxpayer.
Yeah, through your Reeve, in terms of, yes, you're correct in that respect, in terms of that, it's about 145,000 is owed to the taxpayer, so that is taxpayer money. In terms of what the Knights had requested and what staff understand council agreed to, is that that money would be spent on capital improvements. In terms of the kitchen appliances, or the kitchen equipment and things like the flooring, that was not within the scope. But representatives were at the last council meeting and made that request. And as staff understand, council indicated that they wish for that to be embedded or included within the agreement. So that's what you have before you.
Sorry, I was going to say through you, Reeve, did council not vote on this at the last meeting?
That's correct.
Correct.
Right, so I'm just curious why it's coming up or why it's being redebated, because we already had a debate and a vote on this last meeting.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Correct, and I asked head of council at the last meeting when we would be able to receive the information of the previous agreements so we could make the delineation between the two agreements. And I was told at that time that it would have to come back to council again tonight. And it is up on the agenda for picking things out to debate again tonight. So that was the premise, that I was bringing it back out again tonight. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was what I was told by.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're looking for, I guess, comment on that. Yeah, correct. The agreements have not been executed because they've not been adopted by bylaw. So the agreements were brought in draft form to the May 1st council meeting. Council provided direction on that to bring them forward for May 15th with the inclusion of flooring and the kitchen to be moved towards capital expenditures, and also for the pledges and any donations received to go into the reserve account to be used for future capital. So that's the two agreements that are before council tonight. As part of that discussion, it was requested that the original agreement be presented, hence the CAO's report being included in the consent agenda for information.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Yeah, and through you, Reeve, just as a point of clarification, I'm not in any way disallowing or not in favor of the motion and the agreement. Mine was just simply questioning the handling of removing one funding and adding to another one after budget. What? I don't know, just as to why. If it's that simple, then I will reintroduce a motion to reinstate the full funding to be an even deal across all our organizations, rather than picking and choosing which ones we favor. I just saw a double standard going on there, and I was just curious. One was debated before budget and was altered because of a tough budget, and now we're adding to it. and with no line in the budget for it. That was my only concern. So would that be, would that be then put in as a notice of motion at the end? Or would that be done through?
Through your worship, to answer Deputy Reeve Falconer's question, regardless of whether you were, I guess, reconsidering the direction provided at the last meeting or reconsidering direction provided from the budget meeting, yeah, your process would be a notice of motion to reconsider.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Wright, please.
Yeah, a follow-up question. The change of the agreement does not in any way change this year's budget, right? The change in the Knights of Columbus agreement in no way affects this year's budget, correct?
Yeah, through your worship, correct, in terms of any funds that are received from the Knights would go into the Knights reserve account, or the Wing of Columbus reserve account. So it doesn't impact, it will go into the reserve account, and it sits in the reserve account until such time as council gives direction as to how you wish to spend those funds. And that's done through a project schedule, as we call it. So,
Right. So just to comment, I don't see the connection between the two, right? One was a 2023 financial decision about this year's budget. The other one was a change to a lease agreement, which doesn't affect this year's budget. So I don't see why we would potentially change the decisions made on this year's budget just because there was a change to a lease agreement. It's not apples and apples.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Through you, Reeve, as I perceive it, the change in the agreement puts the repayment schedule that would normally go to North Huron into a pot of a fund that only the Knights can draw from. They're receiving their own money back, their own rent back. So that would be a income loss for North Huron to be used back on their own property, or their own leasing, or their own an entity at their choosing, where it was money paid back to the taxpaying of North Huron. So that there is a difference in the agreement. In the original agreement, they were agreeing to fund the building of it from the strat. Now they're wanting whatever they put into it to be held back for their own use. So I'm just saying, we're not doing the same thing with. We can make a fund for our other nonprofit too, that they could, whatever they pay us, they could get back as well. I'm happy with that too. It does change what the budget is.
Yeah, I guess council needs to provide direction on what you're doing, basically, whether you're adopting the consent agenda as is, whether you're taking further action. It's up to the floor of what you guys want to do as a council.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go
I
ahead,
don't want to-
Councillor Van Hitterson, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda except for item 5.2.4, and then make a separate motion to have staff look at both contracts, to look at the financial implications that the contributions to both entities have.
So your
Something like that.
Yeah, so your first motion then would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent item 5.1.1, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives consent items 5.1.2 to 5.3.6, exclusive of 5.2.4 for information.
Okay.
So you have a mover in Councillor Van Hittersum, and you're looking for a second.
Seconder.
I'll second that, Reeve.
Yep. Councillor Wright seconds. All in favor? Carried.
And then your second motion, Councillor Van Hittersum, maybe if you want to.
Yeah, I would like to see a report from, you need to give me some leaders there, towards the the contributions from the Night of Columbus Hall, or from both entities we have as in our municipality that use assets of the municipality, to the how their financial contributions affect taxpayers too, because Councillor Falconer is right, that is not a, if you have a contract first where it stood that they still owe money towards the building and they want to turn around and put that money towards their own kitchen or whatever they need, I don't think that's right towards taxpayers from North Huron. So I would like to have that looked at. And
Let Kirk Lamb get that
a report.
wordsmith there, and
Yeah.
then he can read it to us.
Yep.
So, Councillor Van Heersum, if this is what you're looking for, let me know. But something along the lines of that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to prepare a report regarding the financial contributions from the nonprofit organizations leasing property from North Huron for the purpose of investigating the financial implications of said agreements.
Can I ask a question before we
Yeah, go
put a
ahead.
seconder? Does that include then the Blythe Theatre? Also a nonprofit organization with a lease agreement with the North Huron asset?
I stand to be corrected, but I believe that would be the other one that Deputy Falconer was comparing.
We have two.
What about the Blythe, or the Belgrave Arena?
I stand to be corrected,
So do I.
but I don't know their nonprofit status, so it depends whether that would be captured by.
They're incorporated board.
Okay.
And I guess if there are two particular ones you're looking into, and it sounds like you're looking at a comparison between the Blythe Festival and the Night to Columbus, I would recommend that you amend that motion to list the specific ones you're looking at, so that
Yep.
staff have clear direction.
Okay.
Move,
Yes.
move that. Seconder? Councillor Whitfield, seconds. All in favor? Carried. Public meetings and hearings and delegations. We have Rachel King and Gil Garrett with us from the Blythe Center for the Arts. They're coming up on stage here. Thank you very much.
Our ears
We-
were burning a little bit down there as it.
I don't
This
think
way.
so.
Just gonna set a timer because, as some of you can attest, I can keep talking about my favorite subject, the Blythe Festival. So good evening, everyone. I'm Gil Garrett.
Carson, should I shrink it?
Yep, so you can hit escape on that one.
Just gonna fix up our slides here for the house.
Normally
I
I
think everybody's got theirs in their packet.
We have to pay to see you on stage. This is a treat.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I'm for free tonight. Here we are.
Aha, and then swipe right.
Yeah,
Right,
and then-
got it?
Just to make sure, you didn't bring a
Right,
railway spike with you this time.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
Thank you, Carson.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So it won't show up here, but it'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
All better?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. So we haven't done this for a couple of years, actually, well, I guess a little bit longer than that. It's been a few years since we've come out and brought council up to speed with what is happening at the Blythe Festival. So for those of you who don't know us well already, we wanted to make sure that you got acquainted. So Blythe Festival, Blythe Center for the Arts is actually our legal name. And we actually are the theater festival We are also the art gallery, Blythe Festival Art Gallery, as well as there is an orchestra, the Blythe Festival Orchestra, and the Blythe Festival Singers, which is a professionally led community choir. And we run all of those under the same umbrella. Rachel and I are the ones responsible for reporting on all of them, but there you go. The mission of the festival, for those of you who don't know, that we are a community-based professional theater that endeavors to enrich the lives of our audience by producing and developing plays that give voice to both the region and the country. So what's really important to recognize about that, and I know it comes up in a later slide, is really that our focus is on new plays and on Canadian playwrights. So all of the plays that the Blythe Festival produces are exclusively written by Canadian playwrights. They are directed by Canadian directors. They are performed by Canadian actors. We've got a shop full of Canadian carpenters and Canadian electricians. I mean, everybody who is walking on that stage, the performers, everybody. It's a pretty extraordinary thing. And since we began in 1975, we have actually produced over 150 new Canadian plays, which is a pretty incredible accomplishment. And what I think is really special about that too, and it gets pointed to at the end there, is actually that Blythe Festival's new play commission, so we pay writers to write their work, and we actually are responsible for 25% of all of the new play commissions in the entire country. Through the Playwrights Guild, which is pretty incredible when you think about the scope, the number of Canadian theaters that there are all over this country, that Blythe Festival has that kind of relationship. And what it has meant is that we've really become an incubator, a place where plays begin their lives and where they first walk out on those boards and we have the very beginning, and then a lot of these plays go on to have a further life. We can actually speak to, as it's in this slide, more than 29 countries where Blythe Festival plays have now been performed, which is pretty incredible. And these works have been translated into all kinds of languages. There are actually, right at this very moment, Blythe Festival plays happening, I know, in New Zealand as well as in the UK. It's a pretty extraordinary accomplishment, all in a little town of 1,000 people. So what we've done over the last several years, some of you may know that we had some minor setbacks as the world closed down, and theaters most of all. But we've been getting ourselves, as much as we can, onto what I think of as a strategic footing. We're really trying to look forward and see what we can accomplish over the next 5 years. So we spent some time really reflecting and trying to build. And so we now have a set of 6 goals for the next 5 years that the Blythe Festival is committed to, and we're already well underway. And I know you've already got them in your package and you've likely read them, but just to speak to them a little bit, creating a robust education department. So we really see this as a future pillar of the Blythe Festival. So we've actually hired now an education director. This is a full-time job in the Village of Blythe. And her name is Ashley Williamson. She's an incredible thinker and teacher, educator, who's helping us to build not only some amazing opportunities for teenagers. She actually has just begun working with the Blythe Festival Young Company, who met just this past weekend for the first time. In addition to the Blythe Festival Young Company, she's also working on some adult education opportunities, as well as building out some of the season programming too, some other opportunities for people to come and see guest speakers and things like that. It's pretty exciting. We're also expanding our year-round programming. This has been a long-time goal of the festival, but we're really thrilled to finally be able to take a big bite out of that. Some of you may have noticed that we have our big Christmas show, a Huron County Christmas Carol, is indeed coming back this year. We're pretty excited about that. We want to continue to solidify the festival's public reputation as Canada's premier new play development centre, and that's really about making sure that that everybody knows, as much as possible. You know, I think it was just a few years ago when the Blythe Festival got to take a production of ours to Ottawa, that we also went to the Parliament buildings and Ben Lobb, MPP Ben Lobb, stood up and actually welcomed the Blythe Festival to Parliament and had us there in that official record, which was a pretty extraordinary event. Not a lot of theatre companies get recognized from that House floor. Some big ones that are ahead of us too. We're continuing to try to augment our financial stability. Obviously, in tumultuous times, this is critical, but something that the festival has been enormously grateful to the township for. We've done so much partnering, over the last 50 years, almost 50 years, 49 years. Next year is our 50th anniversary too. You might want to write that in your calendars. The kind of partnering that we've been able to do, particularly around things like the harvest stage, it's just extraordinary what it's been able to do to help us shore up the future and future-proof the festival so that it's here for generations. That's our goal. The other big one is to implement a housing strategy. Housing is front of mind for everyone. I know that that's true. I don't think anybody here would be surprised to learn that a one-bedroom apartment in the village of Blythe can now run you a good $1,800 a month, which is a pretty incredible amount of money. And when you start thinking about how do you have a long-term strategy that pays a workforce in order to be able to survive that kind of market, as well as bring in artists to be able to work for the summer, as well as provide for the folks in our community. So we really hope that there's some future opportunities for the festival and the township together to look at housing. I know that's a big thing for the county as well, and the province and the feds. I think we could all work together and do some beautiful stuff. And to renovate and renew our production shop and administrative buildings. Many of you have actually seen our carpentry shops. They're incredible. We build all of our own sets in-house. We store all of our costumes. We have people who work in our wardrobe department building costumes and props and all these kinds of pieces. And those buildings, unfortunately, are coming near the end of their life. They were built in 1990, and it's about time for us to significantly renovate them. How much time? I should pass it on. The 2023 season, if you go to our website, you'll see it. We've got some amazing shows happening this year. What's phenomenal is we actually have 3 shows happening at the harvest stage and 4 shows happening indoors in Memorial Hall. And so together, across this entire season, there's going to be over 106 performances over the course of the whole summer, which is pretty extraordinary, and an opportunity to bring thousands, tens of thousands of people to the village of Blythe. Do you want to take over there, Rachel?
Sure.
Go for it.
So, and the big changes there with the harvest stage, as you can see in the photo, we're getting permanent seats at the harvest stage. So no more folding chairs, no more bringing them in and out every night. They will be a permanent fixture, and audience members will be able to choose their specific seat when they purchase, which is a huge move forward for that venue. The other thing being that this year, strategically, the 2 venues are not scheduled against each other. So if we know it's going to pour rain, then we can pivot and bring a modified outdoor performance indoors. And ultimately, if we, in a village of 1,000 people, if we were to, we could put more than all of the adults in a theater seat at one time. Once we've got those seats in, I will be super quick because Gil did lots of talking. So also happening, the Blythe Legion and the Legion Ladies Auxiliary have stepped up this year and are going to help us in serving 15 country suppers over the course of the summer, which is truly phenomenal. That's one of the pieces that our longtime patrons have spoken about for the last 4 years, of how much those country suppers mean to them, and communing with a room of strangers and learning about the people that they're watching the show with. Bonanza Weekend is back, and as Gil mentioned, the Young Company is back as well. Our new Director of Education is taking the helm of that. So just for a sense of even more scope of I'm the logistics person. So our summer staff started arriving April 24th, and they're with us through at least September 17th. Over the course of the summer, there will be 95 different folks that we're expecting between April and September. They're going to filter in throughout the summer for anywhere between 4 to 21 weeks long. So for some of these folks, they really truly come and move to this town, and it really does become their home. For 5 or 6 months of the year. They're joining us from 7 different provinces this year, and approximately 55 of them require local housing. So that is a logistics piece that we tackle every year. We also have a dedicated core of volunteers every year, anywhere between 80 to 150 folks that come and help make the season possible. We couldn't do it without them. That is, they do roles like ushers, elevator operators, they sell 50/50 tickets, and they really are the face of the festival and ambassadors for us. They also get to watch the show for free. So if you're interested in volunteering, give box office a call. Our summer audiences, we have 106 performances, 53 of them matinees, 53 of them evening. It's important to know that the matinees are only happening in Memorial Hall. There are a few evenings in Memorial Hall, but those 53 matinees will all be at 2 o'clock on Main Street in Blythe. There are over 39,000 tickets available for sale this year, and on average, pre-pandemic, our audiences came from 9 provinces, 20 states, 2 international countries, and around 400 Ontario communities. And then in terms of things to expect this summer, because it's been 4 years since people have seen these things, there will be increased volume of traffic and a significant increase in pedestrian traffic. Lots of folks crossing the street on Queen Street, more frequent use of the crosswalk and stoplight. That infrastructure didn't actually exist the last time we had indoor summer theater. So that's going to be new to our audiences. We also do temporary no parking signs outside Memorial Hall to make a fire lane for in case of emergency. And the beloved Memorial Hall bell will be ringing several times a day. Box office will be open longer, and even if we don't have a performance scheduled, chances are 6 to 7 days a week, the buildings, there's something going on up to 16 hours a day in order to get things happening. And in terms of people being involved in helping, of course, we're always looking for sponsors and performance hosts. We're always looking for volunteers. And at the very least, tell your friends, spread the news that Blythe is the place to be in summer 2023. And help us to put our best foot forward. Welcome the staff and artists who are joining us to make this their physical and artistic home, and help audiences to see and experience why Blythe, North Huron, and Huron County are pretty great places to be. As Gil mentioned, finally, end of the year, November 30th to December 22nd, Huron County Christmas Carol is back. The tickets go on sale June 14th. We're just working on getting that calendar up on the brand new website. The end. Thank
Great,
you.
well, thank you. You sure can talk fast there. I know our CEO himself, I know we got stuff marked down here. Very good. I was just interested seeing the 80 to 150 volunteers. That's a magnificent number that you need. Yeah.
It's pretty
great.
incredible. Yeah, it's been such a gift to have that core of volunteers. Really, when we pick up the phone, I mean, the folks are there. It's amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, questions from the council? Any questions for Gail and Rachel? Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Through you, Reeve, it's more of a comment. I just wanted to the council to know the how the festival has listened to council in past years. Where this year 53 afternoon plays. The problem with having an evening play is 7 o'clock when everybody comes back out after the theater, when they're mingling around, the stores are all closed. So you get no economic benefit from it. But 53 times this summer, 300 people are going to be walking down the main street of Blythe. So that, you know, they've listened to the store owners, they've listened to how how they can help the community, and I just want to commend them on that. Just that little small change is going to make a big difference for the economy in our town.
Sure. Anything else from anybody?
I mean, if anyone wants to boost the night economy in Blythe too, we're happy to have that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So I'm sure if any questions come to mind, we'll be seeing you out and about, and I know you're going to be busy with these numbers you gave us on your presentation. It's just great to see that.
Wonderful.
Good.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank
Good
you
work.
very much. Okay, 7.1.1, Planning 2023-07, Proposed New Provincial Policy Statement 2023, and Bill 97 changes to the Planning Act. We'll ask Planner Holman to come forward at this time.
All right, thanks, Council, for having me this evening. I will just bring up my presentation. So, as mentioned by the Reeve, the following presentation is to accompany my staff report that's also included on the agenda that goes over proposed new changes to the provincial policy statement as proposed by the province, as well as related legislative updates to the Planning Act. In terms of some background, so in early April, the province did release their actual proposed draft of the provincial policy statement. The last time the provincial policy statement was updated was in 2020. This new provincial policy statement is also seeking to replace the Places to Grow growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe area, which does apply to GTA and surrounding area. So that's not an applicable plan in Huron County, but just for context, it's also seeking to consolidate that into a single document. Primarily, the purpose of updating the provincial policy statement is again to support the province's housing supply action plan. As part of this, again, Bill 97 was also introduced as well as a related act. For the provincial policy statement, comments are being accepted by the province until early June. Bill 97, I will note that the commenting deadline has passed for this, but as you will note in my staff report, I am seeking direction from council to provide comments specifically on the PPS. The nature of the changes to Bill 97 are more technical in nature, so again, it wouldn't be staff's recommendations to send comments on that piece. So again, I'm just going to provide a summary of the most relevant changes to the PPS that are relevant to Huron County, as well as staff comments on this. So perhaps the most significant change is the change to agricultural lot severance policies in the county. So this is a significant change from the current policy direction. So right now, the current provincial policy statement only allows for lot creation in prime agricultural areas in very specific circumstances. One of the most typical ways being specifically for agricultural uses. So again, that's your larger farm parcels, or for surplus farm resident severances. So non-farm residential lots currently are prohibited in the PPS, but the proposed provincial policy statement does propose to allow for the severance of 3 residences from the original farm parcel. So that would be creation of new lots. As well, it does propose to allow additional permanent residence on farms, so additional residential units as well that are part of the same parcel. Which I do have further details on, but in terms of the additional residential units, that is a change that staff are supportive of, provided it is still on the same lot and in proximity to the main dwelling. And that was something also that North Huron Council decided to implement into the official plan update last year. But in terms of the creation of new residential lots, as I will note, that's a different case where staff are in objection. So this does provide some information on the 2 additional residential units in the prime agricultural areas, just requiring that they be in close proximity to the principal dwelling. They comply with the minimum distance separation formula, which is the separation formula between livestock and manure facilities to sensitive uses such as residential units. That the residential unit be compatible with surrounding agricultural operations, and appropriate services will be provided. So again, as mentioned, this would be having the additional residential units actually on the farm parcel. And so typically that would be to provide for farm labor housing. So that is a change that county planning staff are in support of. And again, as mentioned, this was something we considered in the official plan update last year.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, does it, if you create a pure residential lot that's nearby the original house, does it then restrict the use of that farm in the future? Like, would it prevent putting in like a new barn, for example, on that property because it is within close proximity of a residence?
Yes, through the yes. So if it is a severed and separately titled property, then those MDS restrictions do take place.
So it would put restrictions on the ability of a neighboring property to expand or establish a new livestock barn. And my further slides do get into that in detail, but that's the one big distinction, is if you have it part of a single property, then you don't necessarily have that impact because it's not separately titled. But if it's a severed parcel, that's certainly a different impact. However, so these additional residential units, again, the province is introducing policies that you would be able to sever these additional residential units in the future. The county planning staff's position would be that these additional residential units should be supporting the agricultural use for farm labor or for family members, and we were not of the opinion that they should be severed. So that's the one difference there. This is the proposed criteria for the actual lot severances off of agricultural parcels. So this would be for the residential uses. So it does require that the parcel as it exists is primarily being used for agriculture. So the intent of this policy is not if you have an existing residential property in the agricultural area that you could split that. It would be strictly for those larger agricultural parcels. The total number of lots to be created does not exceed 3. So our interpretation of this is, for example, if you had a large 50 or 100 acre farm parcel, you could then create 3 additional residential lots. And again, that's quite a significant change because the current policy, and this has been longstanding, does not allow for any. So any residential use shall be compatible with and shall not hinder agricultural operations. And any new lot needs to be located out of specialty crop areas. So in this part of Huron, we don't have any specialty crop areas. An example of this would be like wineries, for example, in the Niagara region. Complies with the minimum distance separation formula. What I will note with the minimum distance separation formula is how it works is if you're creating a new residential lot or you're establishing a new dwelling, you need to meet the setback to the livestock operation as it exists today, and either how it's being operated or the current capacity of the barn. It doesn't necessarily account for in the future if that farmer wanted to expand their operation, because again, we don't know exactly what they would want to do. So that is concerning, right? Because that would certainly undermine the ability to have expansions. The lot needs to be limited to the minimum size to accommodate servicing. It needs to have an existing access onto a public road with appropriate frontage, and it needs to be adjacent to existing non-agricultural land uses or consist primarily of lower priority agricultural lands. So I do have a later slide that does provide some staff comments on clarifications that we would like from the province on how to exactly interpret these policy requirements, as we do have some questions. Something else that, again, we do have, they do continue to provide for surplus farm resident severances. So that's if a farmer owns at least 2 farm properties each with a dwelling on them, they're able to deem the one resident surplus to their needs of their farm operation and sever that. They do continue to include the prohibition on a residence that is to be constructed on the retained farm parcel with the intent that if the dwelling was not able to service the needs of the farmer, that you don't necessarily have an opportunity to create a new dwelling. My report does go into detail to suggest that perhaps if the province is looking to create more housing, there could be a consideration that perhaps after a certain amount of years after the original lot is severed off, that there may be an opportunity to have a dwelling on that retained farmland, just because we do recognize that for some farmers they would like to have a dwelling on the land that they crop, even if that was perhaps not the intent of the original farmer that severed that, but that does not appear to be a change in the policy. So working with our county mapping staff, we did do an analysis of the potential of this impact to allow the 3 lots per residential properties. So we looked at properties across the county that were either zoned AG1, which is our general agricultural zone, as well as AG2, which is that zone that's the retained farmland from a surplus severance, with the assumption that 3 lots could be created for each parcel. We did include some incorporation into our analysis that considered at least 25% of the property needed to be zoned agriculture, just to show that it's certainly an agricultural property and not a natural environment property. And we did determine that with this high-level calculation, of course, recognizing, it may not be feasible to exactly have 3 residential lots on each parcel, but in the county context, this could allow for up to 24,900 new agricultural parcels. And specifically in North Huron, again, recognizing that geographically North Huron is slightly smaller than some of our other municipalities in the county, that could be over 1,000 new residential lots to be created. So certainly a significant impact, and I think also important to remember that each of these new lots would also be potentially physically removing land that may be used for agricultural uses or is cultivated today. So the following does show a visual of the potential spatial impact of this, and as well the impacts on MDS. So this is an example in Central Huron, but I still believe it would be applicable in North Huron. So in this, we're showing in the light green color the residential lots that could potentially be created, again 3 per farm parcel, assuming they would be located along the road allowances. And there is a conservative estimate of a potential MDS setback impact from those residential dwellings, so that's shown in the red there. In terms of the green or the blue circles, that's showing the potential MDS buffer of if there were to be barns created there. So that ranges from 160 meters to 350 meters. So in terms of the scale of the setback, it depends on what livestock type that you're seeking to put in, and then also how large it's going to be. So there's certainly a range. We have seen files for hog barns, for example, where the setbacks can exceed 500 meters. So certainly for those folks, it would be even more of a challenge. But as you can see here in that blue area, for example, if someone wanted to put a barn there and they needed a 350 meter setback, they would not be able to do that. So that's primarily our main concern. And I think as well, just not thinking about the actual MDS numbers, but just the increased incompatibility of having additional farmers having to deal with additional non-farm residents as neighbors. As a result, we may also see the pressure for farmers, if they want to expand, having to go back further away from the road on their farm property, and that's certainly a cost to farmers in terms of bringing services out there. In terms of staff comments, to summarize, as we all know, Huron County is a prime agricultural area, and agriculture is an essential part of our economy. Provincial and county policies have been quite consistent for the last 50 years. Some of these basics or concepts are pretty well known in planning, that this is not great planning at all. So it is a significant shift, and staff are quite concerned. I did mention before that the draft zoning bylaw review does allow for additional residential units in agricultural areas, provided they're part of the main building cluster and they're not to be severed, because we certainly do recognize that there is a need for housing for farm labor or in terms of succession planning for families. But in terms of severing, that's again something we are not in favor of, as it would not further the interests of the agricultural industry and is certainly short-sighted. In terms of a summary of the long-term impacts of this, as mentioned, the increased MDS restrictions on the placement of new barns or livestock or manure facilities, the increased opportunity for conflict with modern farm practices with additional people living in agricultural areas, the potential reduction in residential assessment value in settlement areas. So again, if lots are being created in the rural areas, that may reduce the need or desire to create housing where we want to see it, which is in our settlement areas, where council has invested significantly. So an example of that would be bringing services out to Hutton Heights. So it's certainly been made clear by council that that's where they want residential development, as they've invested significantly in servicing there. And that again does speak to the lost opportunity for infrastructure efficiency in settlement areas if you don't have as much development in those serviced areas. The potential greater demand for rural services, so snow plowing, garbage collection, emergency services. Another concern that we have is if some of these rural residential lots were to be created adjacent to settlement areas and they're unserviced, it may potentially make it more difficult and costly for future settlement area expansions and extensions of those services if they essentially have to leapfrog over that development. Our staff comments and reports are also requesting clarification from the provinces on their criteria for these new residential lots. It's not clear to staff what exactly is to be considered a non-agricultural use, whether this is if you're adjacent to a designated settlement area, recreational use, and institutional use, or whether severances can occur to all existing residences. It's not clear what the province considers to be lower priority lands. It appears that this goes beyond just areas that have lower soil capability to any area that the farmer may consider low priority or inconvenient to farm. It's also not clear what the province means by an existing access on a public road. Does this entrance have to exist, or can it be obtained as part of the process? We do have a comment about provincial highways. Again, North Huron doesn't have any provincial roads, but for example, it's generally discouraged to add additional entrances onto highways, such as provincial highways, or I would say similar comments could be said for county highways. So certainly the implications of that would also need to be considered in terms of road safety. So in terms of staff comments, to summarize, if the province's intent is to permit 3 residential lots from every farm, we believe this has the potential to result in thousands of scattered non-farm residential lots in the agricultural area. We encourage the province to reconsider this direction and the long-term effects that it will have on prime agricultural lands and maintaining the ability for farmers to farm without restriction. Again, is not mentioned in much detail, but there also may be unintended consequences for other uses that do occur outside of our settlement areas. So for future aggregate extraction operations, that's another consideration. So that does summarize the agricultural related portion of the presentation. I will pause just in case council has any comments or questions.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. And with the possibility of 1,098 residential lots within the boundaries of North Huron, do those lots would those lots automatically go against our surplus of infill lots, or would be just added as they become available? Because a farm may not choose to put 3 lots on there, but does that initial assessment become a lump sum that the township has to deal with now, or is it just as those lots come up?
So through the reef, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, that would be as they come in, they would have to deal with that. It's the analysis, I guess, I would say is more of a worst case scenario. If everyone wanted to do that, certainly that likely won't be the case, but definitely to show the potential impact.
Yeah, it was just based on our inability to promote expansion on property that is already designated for development. Mm-hmm. We have to calculate those lots, even though we don't have any control over them, into our process, such as Hutton Heights. So that would be substantially burdening to a municipality if they suddenly had another 1,098 lots that they had to account for in their strategic plan. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time for this part? I see the way you mentioned to it, there's a lot of questions coming from county planners to higher up, I take it, right?
That's correct. And the one other comment I will add is, again, there is a note at the bottom of the report, but the county staff did consult with, there's a group of other county planners, and they also do have very similar comments and concerns. So I would say there's quite a consensus on this.
Yes, because this is a breadbasket for sure here in county, so it affects all the 9 municipalities in big time. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions before we move on to the next part? Okay, go ahead then, Anna.
So one other of the larger changes is there have been some refinements to the policies that allow for designated settlement area expansions. They do propose to remove the current requirement for a comprehensive review to identify a new settlement area or expand an existing one. This does provide more flexibility to municipalities to consider a settlement area expansion at any time. So historically, this would be typically done when you do your review of your official plan every 5 years, as we did last year. But it does provide some flexibility. A comprehensive review will typically, it's quite the exercise where you would have to look at all the available employment and residential lands and consider over the long term if additional lands are needed. So it does provide some flexibility in stating that an extensive study to that nature may not necessarily be required. But they still do require some tests that we think are still relevant. So that's consideration for servicing availability, so water and sewage, ensuring a phased progression of urban development, and also considering any impacts on agriculture. There's also proposed to be introduced no limit on the ability of landowners if they wish to apply for this expansion. Although the Planning Act continues to limit the appeal ability for refusals on this. So in terms of staff comments, we are supportive of the change to streamline the process for settlement areas where it is appropriate. Again, we think it does provide some more flexibility to direct that growth to where we want to see it, which is in those settlement areas where servicing is available, and there's been significant investment, and that it's a more efficient land than scattered residential lots. I think it also does provide some flexibility for those people that are keen to do development, and if they are in an appropriate location, that is a conversation that can be had. The province does also introduce language that the municipalities should set density targets for these expanded areas, again, emphasizing the word should, not required. So our staff comments do say that the province should encourage or should include more stronger wording in terms of these density targets, just to ensure that if these lands are being included in the settlement area for development, that they are making the most use of ensuring that you get a variety of residential units and add a number to support the servicing. There also are changes to the employment areas and employment land conversions. So currently under the provincial policy statement, it was more restrictive if you wanted to convert what's deemed employment areas to other uses, such as for a residential use. So they have restricted that the employment areas definition at this time will only include industrial uses, whereas previously it did also include commercial, institutional, or retail or office. In terms of what this means for the county and as well as North Huron is currently right now our employment lands are only considering industrial areas just due to the nature of the county. Some other places like offices or commercial areas, they tend not to be as consolidated in a single area. So part of the intent of this policy from the province is areas in larger municipalities where they have a lot of office buildings, for example, they want to make it more flexible to potentially introduce housing there, while also still specifically saying industrial uses should continue to have a little bit more stringent requirements in terms of converting those lands to residential uses. So this is a change that staff are supportive of, but again, we don't anticipate that it will have too much of an impact in the county and North Huron. In terms of growth targets, so the current policy statement does say that municipalities have to have enough land designated up to 25 years. So in theory, you could have less land designated for that. And the assumption that is that you would have enough land to accommodate the projected growth for the next 25 years. The language is proposed to change that it specifically says you have to have at least 25 years. So instead of making it a you should do, it's more of a requirement. And they will no longer be required to have an intensification target, but will need overall density targets. So in some of the larger municipalities in Ontario, they would have certain areas like their downtown core where they specifically wanted to see infill development. Density targets more so speaks to more greenfield development. So that's a little bit of shift there, just saying that if you're creating a new development, it needs to have X number of units per hectare. Staff don't have much comments on this. We did include minimum density targets in the official plan update. And the county is also planning to engage with a consultant this year, as approved in the county budget, to update our population and housing needs projections. And this will help to assist in assessing whether these minimum density requirements are still relevant. The provincial policy statement does also, it currently does have a section that speaks to natural heritage, or we also use the term in the county natural environment. So it currently contains policies that speak to certain natural features that may or may not have development in them, as well as that you would need to demonstrate that there's no negative impacts. But this section, currently there is no proposed policy. This is something that the province has said that they will review this separately and provide an update at a later date on this. So this section is currently blank. So that is something staff will wait for. In terms of what that means for North Huron, as council is aware, we are updating the zoning bylaw review right now, and part of that does include reviewing the natural environment zoning. It is staff's opinion that that project should continue as is, because it is still important to be identifying those areas in terms of the zoning and making sure the zoning is actually reflecting what's on the ground. Should there be significant changes in terms of the policies, that is something we would assess at that time, and if needed, the accompanying policies or text could be updated from that. So that concludes the PPS portion of it. I will go into the Bill 97 changes in a moment, but we would be seeking direction from council to send comments to the province, specifically on the provincial policy statement changes. So I will provide an opportunity to council for comments or questions.
Any comments from anybody here? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Councillor Van
I've written it
Heusen.
down, but can you please turn on the light? I can't see what I've written down. Yeah, I'm totally agree with you that we have to send a letter to the province, but I also think our agriculture minister needs a letter, and the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and Huron County Federation of Agriculture, and also about the effects all the water, the new wells and septic systems will have. It's a very important thing. And a lot of farmers are already complaining about stray voltage. If there are more houses coming into the rural areas, what will that do to their hydro network? Because it's now already not very good and very unreliable. The rural area provides a big area for source protection water for the towns. What is the effect on that if there's still more people coming to live and needing water and septic systems? Let's see, what else did I write down? I think the rural areas are unfairly targeted because they already under pressure for the heritage, the new natural heritage designations that are coming up that puts a lot of restrictions on farmland. Now they're talking about putting houses everywhere, so we're getting less and less really good farmland available for farmers and making it less attractive for farmers to provide the people in Ontario with their products, with food. And I think the provincial government should prioritize their what they want with their housing bill and look more at the settlement areas to grow those. And I know we need land, but it should be a little bit more concentrated, work on infill lots and and sections around settlement areas. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments there, Councillor Van Henderson, for sure. And I know a lot of those things are going back to higher up at the county level anyways, so. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, maybe we'll ask the lights to go down again and
So the following is just going to provide some comments on Bill 97, which was the Helping Home Buyers and Protecting Tenants Act. There are a number of changes in this bill, but we've selected the ones that are most relevant to the planning function. There are certainly other related changes, but these are the most relevant. Again, most of these changes, staff are of the opinion that they are more minor and technical in nature than the proposed PPS changes, so we are not recommending that council submit comments. So the bill does clarify new ministerial powers. So one thing that they specifically want to provide direction to is that if a property was, or an application was subject to a ministerial zoning order, so that's a request that a landowner can make to the province for an application to get the province to change their zoning. So that would be something that wouldn't be the decision-making authority of local or county council. It does clarify that if there is a corresponding other planning application, so such as a plan of subdivision, that application does not have to comply with the provincial policies or official plans, which otherwise they would be considered. So that does provide one exemption to that. So that would give the minister the ability to address circumstances where an MZO does not address or is in conflict with an official plan. It does provide some transitional regulations for the new provincial policy statement. As well, it does introduce powers of municipalities to regulate the demolition and conversion of residential rental properties. So some larger municipalities in Ontario, they do have bylaws that provide certain restrictions on if residential rental units are proposed to be demolished or converted, that there's certain stipulations in terms of replacing those rental units or possibly making contributions to an affordable housing fund. So that's not something that North Huron or the county has, but the province is seeking to provide more standardized direction on the procedures from that, rather than municipalities having a bit more control on what those bylaws exactly look like. We did previously chat about the Bill 109 changes. So this is within certain timeframes, providing fee refunds for zoning bylaw, official plans, amendments, and site plan approval applications if no decision is made in statutory time periods. This initially was planning to come into force effect on January 1st. This has now been proposed to change to July 1st. The intent of this was to provide municipalities more time to respond to the changes. In terms of the North Huron context, this has not been an issue to date. Historically, we have a good track record on processing these applications in due time. So the following just provides a reminder of the fee refund schedule for that. And again, that now is not applicable till July 1st. So Bill 23 also, which was a previous bill, did specify that if you are having additional residential units, so that's additional to an existing residential unit, either within the residential unit or an accessory building, that municipalities could not require that it would have more than one parking space. So Bill 97 does clarify that for other residential units, so the primary residential units, that it would be up to the municipalities on whether they want to require more than one parking space for that main unit. So that's just a clarification. We previously also chatted about how Bill 23 did remove the ability of municipalities to exercise site plan control for any housing development that had 10 or fewer units. So the township has updated their site plan bylaw to reflect this. But Bill 97 does include some exemptions to this, and that's specifically if development is within 120 meters to a shoreline or is with 300 meters to a railway line. So that doesn't necessarily affect North Huron, so the shoreline being, for example, the Lake Huron shoreline. So these circumstances don't necessarily exist in North Huron, but once the corresponding regulations are out, we will review that if that needs to be looked at. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned before, staff do recommend that council submit the comments as outlined in the report, along with if they have any additional comments to the province for consideration and clarification, and then this would be specific to the provincial policy statement section. So I'm happy to answer any questions that council has.
Thank you, Hannah. That was a lot to take in for sure. I know questions will probably come to us after a bit too, but are there any questions from councillors to Hannah at this time? Seeing none. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the planner dated May 15th, 2023 regarding the proposed new provincial policy statement 2023 and Bill 97 changes to the Planning Act for information. And further, that council directs staff to submit comments to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing on the proposed changes to the provincial policy statement 2023 as outlined in staff reports PL 2023-07. Do I have a mover? Councillor McBurney, Deputy Faulkner, all in favor?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Can we please add, like, what I asked for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and the Minister MP Thompson? Into the, where this report, or these comments go?
So you have a mover and a seconder, so provided the mover and seconder are fine with that.
They're fine with that, thank you.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Hannah, appreciate that. And I'm sure Mondays we can catch Hannah down at the town hall, and if anything comes to your mind, don't hesitate going in. She's very good, or reach her on her phone, no problem at all. Very much. I appreciate your work, Hannah. (7.1.2) CL 2023-09, amendment schedule for 2023 regular council meetings, that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the clerk dated May 15th, 2023, regarding an amendment to the schedule for 2023 regular meetings of council for information purposes. And further, that the council hereby approves an amendment to the 2023 schedule for regular meetings of council to reschedule the Monday, July 3rd meeting to Tuesday, July 4th, and to reschedule the Monday, August 7th meeting to Tuesday, August 8th. And further, that notice of the updated 2023 schedule for regular meetings of council be posted. Are there any questions for Clerk Lamb on this? It's very straightforward, just a couple change in dates there. I have a mover. Councillor Van Hitterson, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. 7.1.3, CL 2023-10, flag raising request, Huron County Pride. That the council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the clerk dated May 15th regarding a flag raising request received from Huron County Pride for information purposes. And further, that council approves the request to fly the pride flag at the North Huron Municipal Office for the month of June 2023. And further, that council hereby declares the month of June 2023 as Pride Month. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wright, Councillor Van Hitterson. Questions from anybody? Seeing none, I just want to make comment, I cannot support this motion of 7.1.3. I believe our municipal property should be represented by our civic flags, for federal, provincial, and municipal. I believe these flags represent all of us. Saying that, I'll take this to a vote now. May I have a recorded vote?
Comment.
Oh, sorry.
Through you, Reeve, then, am I to take that the Reeve does not support the township's flag raising bylaw?
This was added here. Yes, we all get a vote on this.
Yeah, no, but you're stating
Yeah.
that,
We're having a recorded vote on this.
no, but it's already a bylaw, correct?
Yes, it's already a bylaw.
Isn't council supposed to, once a bylaw is enacted, support that bylaw?
We get a vote on this. That's why
We voted
I'm going to
on
go
it
to.
a year or 2 years ago.
Yes,
You know,
I
but no, but
understand.
I'm just asking if you're not in compliance with our own bylaw, you're rejecting our own bylaw as Reeve?
As Reeve, yes, it was taken.
So is that not a violation of the code of conduct of council that we all have to abide by? I'm just asking, it's in our code of conduct, so I'm just asking if
Okay,
if the Reeve is in rejection of our code of conduct. That's why I was asking you if you were against our bylaw. You can have an opinion, but I'm just asking, you were saying that you don't, as Reeve, support a bylaw that we voted on as council. I'm just asking.
I
if
know
you're going
how
to-
I
if you're going to-
voted.
if I'm just going to know, well, I know, it doesn't matter how anybody voted. It was passed by council. I'm just asking if the head of our municipal council is declaring a conflict with our own code of conduct, or I'm just looking for clarification on
No,
the comment.
I'll accept what our thing is, but we're having a vote on this. We're still having.
Oh, yeah, but we already have a flag raising policy that would allow this.
Yes,
So we're just asking to vote on the adoption of this.
yes, this is what we're voting on.
But you made a comment to council and to the township that you were not in favor of a bylaw that we have, but under
No.
our constitution, once a bylaw is passed,
And it's passed. I'm sorry, I guess I read that wrong. I'm voting on what we're voting for tonight. No, we have our law, we have our bylaw already in there. We voted on that last time, right? We brought it in last year and it was brought up there at our previous meeting, and we're voting on this, what they're asking for here tonight, right?
So
Okay, I'll let that stand for,
Reeve Heffer has requested a recorded vote. So I will now call the vote. Deputy Reeve Falconer,
yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
Councillor Van Hittersum,
Yes.
Councillor Whitfield,
Yes.
Councillor Wright,
Yes.
and Reeve Heffer.
No.
So that motion carries 5-1 with the no being Reeve Heffer.
Thank you.
Excuse me, at this point, it's not specific to this vote, but I thought, and I've been asked this by the public, so I thought I'd get clarification. I thought the Reeve generally voted only to break a tie, but there seemed to be a practice lately where the Reeve votes when there is no tie. So can I get clarification on that? Because the public's asking, so I'm just curious if you're aware of what our bylaws say about that.
Off the top of my head, I cannot give you the, I guess, well-defined answer. The Municipal Act says that every councillor has one vote. In practice, the Reeve tends to only vote when to break a tie. On a recorded vote, every councillor does vote because it's a call for every councillor to vote. But in reality, the Reeve can vote on everything. In practice, in most municipalities, the Reeve tends to only vote when there's a tie.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Just, it's been coming up, so I just wanted to know.
That's not the polished answer, and I can certainly get council the polished answer, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead,
Thank
Deputy
you,
Reeve.
Deputy Reeve. I just wonder if, it can come at any time or in an email, but I just wonder if I get clarification of the council code of conduct when it comes to past bylaws and as to what, we might as well not have one. We don't have, I mean,
Duly noted.
once something's passed, council is supposed to get behind it. But if that's not the case, then we should all know that.
7.1.4, CL 2023-11, use and acceptance of electric signatures policy that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the joint report of the clerk's administrative assistant and the clerk dated May 15, 2023 regarding a use and acceptance of electronic signatures policy for information purposes. And further, that the council approves the use and acceptance of electric signatures policy as presented, and further, that the clerk be directed to prepare a bylaw for the June 5th, 2023 regular council meeting to adopt a Township of North Huron use and acceptance of electronic signatures policy. May I have a mover? Councillor Wright, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor. Are there any questions, sorry, first of all, for Clerk Lamb? All in favor? Carried. Finance 2023-15, 2023 tax rate bylaw, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the Director of Finance Treasurer dated May 15, 2023 regarding the 2023 tax rates for information purposes. And further, that the council adopt bylaw number 4023, being a bylaw established that 2023 tax rates for the Township of North Huron at the May 15, 2023 regular council meeting. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Whitfield, Councillor Wright. Any questions? This is pretty straightforward. Great. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. 7.4.1. Public Works 2023-12 Wingham Sidewalk Extension Project, Josephine Street, that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report from the Director of Public Works and Facilities dated May 15, 2023 regarding the Wingham Sidewalk Extension Project on Josephine Street for information purposes. And further, that the Council authorize the Director of Finance Treasurer to transfer $57,133.10 from the Gas Federal Gas Tax Reserve Fund to provide the additional funds required to top up the already approved 2023 Josephine Street Sidewalk Project. May I have a mover? Councillor Wright?
I was going to ask
Oh.
a question.
Okay, go ahead. Questions first then, please.
So first of all, I don't know if, because I know it's been a turnover, but do we know where the original estimate came from? Because I'm a bit taken aback that we're off by 120% on the estimate of a project. It's a big amount. So I just wanted to know, do we know what process was used behind that first number? Or did it just come from the county, or was it internal, or?
Peter Reedhopper, Councilor Wright. My understanding is, and I inherited this number unfortunately, was that it was a placeholder for this project. And after the RFP or RFT came back to the county, the number before you right now, the $107,133.10, is reflected in the tender that the county staff wish to present to county in a couple of days. So this is where our current number stands. And unfortunately, I can't give you any rationale to why the placeholder was there, but, yes.
So if I could do a follow-up, if you don't mind. So yeah, I think it shows that, I mean, there's a gap in the project, capital project planning process that North Huron uses, right? You know, the vernacular for just throwing it up there is called a WAG. W stands for wild, G stands for gas, and I'll let you figure out what the A stands for. And bad data leads to bad decisions, right? And I can't, you know, I'm not coming down on the current Director of Public Works, but, you know, it's a process thing, right? Processes are there in order to make sure individuals don't fail. So I think it's something we need to challenge in the future, right? That when we're presented with a number, there has to be some basis to it, right? There should be a design done, there should be an engineering firm or someone have done an estimate on it. You know, we should know the confidence level of the number that we're talking about when we're looking at budgets or approving projects, right? My only other comment is, in my mind, I'm not in favor of this motion. We already, as a group, decided how much we were going to take out of reserves this year. That number was settled already. So, you know, I think you have to manage a budget as a budget, and we should be looking at figuring out what else needs to be canceled or postponed in order to come up with this money. You know, the reserves are not an empty, infinite pot of money. They'll get drained. And so that's just my thought, is we need to take a different approach to figure out, you know, is this the bottom least important project we're doing this year? Is it in the middle? Is it the top? You know, and figure out what else needs to move. You know, we have to spend our money responsibly. Thank you, Reeve.
Thank you. In all fairness to our Director Fortney, I was with the meeting with Huron County up here with Interim Director Chip Wilson, and they took at the number of feet and what it should cost per for the footage there, and they figured it'd be approximately around the 50 is what Chip said. So I think it also tells us what things have gone up quite a ways too. So that's where that number came from. Okay. Okay, and Councillor Van Heersen had a question.
Thank you, Reeve. Yes, I was wondering the same what Councillor Wright was saying, like we're taking or planning on taking 57,000 from the OSIF reserves. Is that taking away from something else, or is that money that was sitting there?
Through Reeve Heffer to Councillor Van Henderson. My understanding is that the Federal Gas Tax Reserve Fund does have funds sitting there for us to use as we get to do. And I don't unfortunately know at this present time what that balance is, but the funds are there for us to go forward with this project. And just to clarify, this is a county project. It's conditional that the fact, if we do not move forward with this motion, then there's a potential for the entire project to be canceled. That's a discussion at county council. That's not for me to get involved in, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Deputy Reeve.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. I too agree with Councillor Wright on the procedure needs to be looked at a little more firmly, but I also want to mention this is a safety issue for the pedestrians that are using that highway, walking down the highway. So we have to take that into concern too. It is a public safety issue.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions?
So, question, Reeve, if I wanted to amend the motion, would I do it at this time?
We have got a mover in a second.
That's correct. If there was an amendment from the floor, now would be the time to do so.
Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
So I would like to propose that, that we amend the motion, and, you know, we leave everything as it is, that the finance treasurer to transfer 53,000, or, okay, I'm not sure how to word it, but basically I'd like to word it that we take this money out of other approved capital projects for the year. So we can still go ahead with this project. I understand it is a safety issue, but staff will have to come back with a recommendation to find out, you know, what other, how we're going to take this money out of other approved projects as opposed to out of the reserve fund. Because I don't think, again, we just did a budget. We said this is how much money we're going to spend on capital dollars this year, and I don't think we should change that. Right? So that's I'd like it amended that way.
Go ahead, Clerk Lamb.
Yeah, so through your worship, the challenge with that is, so your first half of that would direct the Director of Finance to transfer that money, but would not indicate where it would be from. So you couldn't make the transfer without indicating where it would be from.
So we'd have to pick, so there is, there was the fund that was used, well, I don't know. There was the fund that was used to being used to demo the 2 buildings in Blythe was one. I'm trying to think about the other reserve funds which were used in the budget.
Go ahead.
I guess. Okay.
I don't think that's a good idea to move things around from that already. Probably in motions, RFPs are out, and if there's money, if we want to go ahead with that, if the OSIF money is there, we're not even sure if the county wants to move ahead with it, so I think it should be taken, just leave the motion as is. I don't want to take money away from products that are people counting on now after the budget process, and staff is probably working on RFPs and reports that are including those funds.
Deputy Reeve.
We have a motion on the floor. Would have to be dealt with first before
Yeah.
we change.
Go ahead.
Okay, so okay, I'll just withdraw my amendment because I guess I didn't come prepared to make a proper amendment to this motion. Don't have the information in front of me right now, Reeve.
Okay.
So I'll withdraw my notice to make an amendment to this motion. But you know, with the comment that you know, best practice for managing projects, and it's not my opinion, it's from the PMBOK Book of Knowledge by PMI, is you authorize a project based on a dollar amount. When the dollar amount changes, especially this significantly, it should be expected that council will have to reapprove the budget, right? We don't just approve a project, we approach a project and a budget, right? And so we really need to improve this process because like stuff in my mind is getting out of hand. And like I said, it's not the projects we approved, it's the budget we approve. So, and a comment. Thank you, Reeve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Henderson?
I think projects are changing all the time. If you are looking at the different in prices, it goes up and down all the time. So we need to have an estimate to work with, and if it's less, then that's wonderful. This is outrageous. I have to agree with Councillor Wright, but it's it is what life is right now.
And again, we have to consider the safety factor. I'm sure it's been brought to some of your attention. People trying to cross that thing just the way they have, they're thinking of getting in the driveways. And go ahead, Councillor Faulkner.
I'll make the motion to accept it as is.
Okay, you're the mover, seconder. Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Sorry, what was that?
7.6.1.
Oh, that's fine. 7.6.1 COL 2023 TAN Community Improvement Plans Applications. Are there any questions for our EDO, Dimitri? Okay, Dimitri, if you'd be able to come to the,
Sorry, it's just a comment.
Yeah.
I'm not requiring a response from Dimitri. I just want to say that this is one of our good news stories. Any time that we can use this fund, it comes back in spades and helps our downtown cores and our business owners. So I'm happy to see
exactly.
someone actually coming through and using this for improvements.
Any other comments or questions for Dimitri? Seeing none, that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the Economic Development Officer dated May 15th, 2023 regarding the commercial facade improvement grant application for 176 Josephine Street, Wingham, and the direct grant for structural work for 258 Josephine Street, Wingham. And further, that the council hereby approves the commercial facade improvement grant application for 178 Josephine Street, Wingham, to the amount of $1,668.45. And further, that the council hereby approves the direct grant for structural work application to 258 Josephine Street, Wingham, to the amount of $10,000. And further, that the clerk be directed to prepare and execute an agreement between the Township of North Huron and the applicants, which outlines the terms, conditions of the grant programs. May I have a mover? Deputy Reeve Faulkner, seconder. Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Again, as you say, Deputy Reeve, it was a good news story. Just like to go now to 9.1, the Reeve Activity Report. Just want to make a comment to the Trail Committee are very happy with working with the Rec Department on the trail. And I can go along that we really appreciate the volunteerism that goes out with that Trail Committee, and just seeing a good thing going now that things are getting back to normal, able to get out doing things like that. Again, for the unveiling of the mural is nice to see the collaboration between the community connectors, the BIA, and the library. It was good to see that and see what they came up with. It's just nice to see how a project like this can come to fruition. And again, as was mentioned before, how we have to set up the stage here because things going on here, but the Almost Famous group of Wingham here players, they had 3 nights of their pretty well sold out performances where people coming in, appreciating the work that these people do, and just kudos out to those that work and benefit with these young people. It's very much appreciated. Now, are there any council member reports, verbal or written updates from members who sit on boards or committees? Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thanks, through you, Reeve. So, again, just a brief mention of the planning activities going on for the Alice Munro Festival of Short Story. Things are getting quite hectic right now, but basically the events are all finalized now. Tickets are now for sale. Just go to the website, Alice Munro Festival website. Schedule's all there. All the visiting authors are there. So we're just kind of looking at the last minute touches with volunteers and this and that, but everything looks pretty good. Just a side question, because it's been a few years. Was there at one point a street banner for the Alice Munro Festival? I know there was one for the Muskrat Festival. Was there not one for the Alice Munro Festival as well? Anyway, it's just, maybe if someone could look in some boxes, that there might be a banner that we could put up across Main Street. I seem to have a recollection there was one, but not for sure.
Right.
That's it, Reeve, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none. Now, sorry. 9.3. Sorry, I got flipped it over the wrong way. 9.3, we have comments by members. Seeing none. Notice of motion. Seeing none. Bylaws. 10.1, bylaw number 36, 2023, County of Huron Recreation Day Camp Subsidies Agreement. Mover, Councillor Van Hitterson, Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. 10.2, bylaw number 37, 2023, adoption of a social media policy for the Township of North Huron. Mover, please. Councillor McBurney, seconder. Councillor Van Hitterson, all in favor?
Sorry, no opportunity for questions?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just, and forgive me, I think this was answered the last meeting, but I can't remember what the answer was. In section 7.6, where it said page management was still to be determined or to be filled in, that was the same way as it was one time when the first draft was provided, and I thought that was going to be changed or filled in or a schedule added or something.
Through your worship, yeah, the answer I gave last time is that Appendix A is meant to be a sample social media plan that each submitting entity would then fill out. So what is left highlighted there are basically fill in the blanks for whichever staff or department would be submitting the social media plan.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. I knew there was a good answer, and I just couldn't remember what it was. Thank you.
We have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? Carried. 10.3, bylaw number 38, 2023, Wingham Columbus Center Agreement. I have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wright, Councillor Whitfield.
Did we not put that back for more information earlier in the meeting?
So through you, your worship, to answer Deputy Falconer's question, a follow-up report was requested, basically comparing the financial implications of the two. At this point, nothing has been deferred. That's not to say if council wanted to use that report to make a decision on this, I would suggest that you pass a motion to defer this bylaw. But as of right now, nothing has been deferred. We would bring a follow-up report with basically a financial comparison of the implications between the Blythe Festival and the Wingham Columbus Center agreements, in case you wanted to do something from a reconsideration perspective. But as of right now, there's been no motion or direction to defer these bylaws.
Thank you for the clarification.
I have a mover and a seconder, right?
So your mover is Councillor Wright and your seconder is Councillor Whitfield.
All in favor? Carried. Bylaw 10.4, bylaw number 39, 2023, Knights of Columbus Pledge Agreement. I have a mover and Councillor Wright, seconder. Councillor Whitfield, all in favor? Carried. Bylaw 10.5, bylaw number 4023, tax rate bylaw. Do I have a mover? Counselor Whitfield, Counselor Wright, all in favor? Carried. Announcement, the next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 6 PM in the North Huron Town Hall Theater. Next Wingham BIA meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 17th, 2023 at 6:30 in the Hot Stove Lounge at the North Huron West Cass Community Complex. The next Blythe BIA meeting board will be meeting Thursday, May 25th, 2023 at 8 AM at the Blythe and District Community Center. Are there any other announcements? Conformatory bylaw 14.1, bylaw number 41, 2023 conformatory bylaw. May I have a mover? Counselor Whitfield, seconder, Counselor McBurney, all in favor? Carried. Adjournment, that the council of the Township of North Huron agree that being no further business before council, that the meeting be hereby adjourned at
7:45 PM.
7:45. May I have a mover? Counselor Wright, Counselor Van Hitterson, all in favor? Carried.